Okay, I have to go to interview and shit over this one, so good luck.
Yep. Who are you interviewing with?
Some guy just something for school.
Did he pay you?
Oh no.
Mistake.
Running right.
Sally's up here. Help. He's dead. Don't worry about it, Steve. I'll just
Just took us like 4 fucking games to do it, but you know.
We threw it up. Not too bad. The winner perspective. Alright, I'll see you, Twitch chat. Have a good interview.
But yeah, who cares about all that? That's drops. That's pennies compared to what they're worth, what their actual value in a capitalist system would be. Oh wait, hello?
Hello.
Hey, how's it going, buddy?
Oh, hello, Mr. Bond. It's nice to finally get in touch with you.
Yeah, nice to talk to you too, buddy. How you
Oh
doing?
God, you're a tricky man to get a hold of, but every time you figure something out.
Yeah, sometimes I've been traveling a lot, so my shit is kind of fucked recently, but here I am.
I know, definitely. It's definitely been a hectic week, especially in the States.
Yeah.
Were you following the local elections?
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. In a general sense, yeah.
In a general sense, I thought you were quite the political channel.
So like I follow the general trend of the elections, but I'm not like really vested in any of like any of the individual elections, if that makes sense.
Ah, I see. Oh, that's good. You are live now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm just gonna give you before we begin, like sort of a quick like general like rundown on like what this is, like what your privacy is, etc., etc. Which obviously streaming adds like a new dimension to it, but essentially, would you be okay with me like using like your actual like name if I were to like type this interview down the line, or would you like to remain anonymous?
Yeah. What is this for again?
First of all, with general sense, it would be mainly for my master's dissertation, but I may also use it for journal articles or.
Oh yeah, I highly prefer
really.
my real name over calling me Destiny. Yeah, I go by my real name when I do political stuff.
All right, will do. Well, that's good to know. And yeah, essentially, I'm gonna use it for my dissertation, but also I'll have like essentially carte blanche to use it for like journal articles, essays, that sort of thing.
Yeah, whatever you want to do. Yeah, you have exclusive ownership over the rights to the interview and all that. Yeah, not my video, but like whatever I tell you, you can do it with whatever. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's great. And just to like triple check, you are okay with like streaming this, and there's not going to be any like sensitive stuff that comes out. All right.
I don't think so. I mean, unless we should be fine.
All right. Well, I mean, hopefully not. Yeah, if at any point I ask a question that makes you uncomfortable, just like tell me to shut up, basically.
Yeah, we'll be fine.
That's great. Okay, so I suppose we can start there. I predict this will be like around 45 minutes because I have to make a transcript of this. Okay. So we don't want it to be too disastrously long. But can you give me, for those who aren't aware, like a quick rundown bio of like who you are and what you do?
Sure, my name is Stephen Bunnell. I stream video games and politics on Twitch TV. I've been doing it for about 9 years, and if you know me today, you either know me for the political content that I do on Twitch or YouTube, in which I'm like a center-left leaning American, or you know me for playing video games like StarCraft or League of Legends or any other number of games I'll play.
My goodness, how hype.
Yeah.
Now, when I was doing my research onto you and talking to other people in your general sphere about you, you seem to be quite the controversial figure. A lot of people requested that I didn't talk to you, and I'm just curious, why are you such a controversial figure?
Well, I mean, it really depends on who you ask. I could give a million different answers for that.
Well, I've been talking about it mainly a lot of like edgy right-wing people, a lot of alt-right, alt-light people.
Oh, sure, yeah. So if you're an edgy right-wing person, you probably think I'm very controversial or you hate me because I have very strong positions that I feel are very principled in regards to Republicans or conservatives in the United States today. So, for instance, like some positions I might hold, like for instance, Christians, extremist fundamentalist Christians have a lot more in common with extremist fundamentalist Muslims than they'd like to admit, or that the Republican Party is very easily the biggest threat to the existence of the United States today than any other like individual organization. Like these are opinions that I hold quite strongly that people might say are edgy or controversial. Sure.
Well, it's interesting. Can I pick up something? You said the Republican Party might lead to the disintegration of the United States. What do you mean by that?
I think that the Republican Party flirts with authoritarianism way too much, and I think that they support things that might cause like actual destruction to the infrastructure that maintains our democracy. So, for instance, undermining rule of law, or undermining how like the courts work, or the prevalence of fake news, or just straight up lying to the electorate. I think that, or undermining liberal freedoms, like attacking the press and whatnot. I think are all really, really bad things.
Oh my goodness, it's very interesting in perspective. And do you think that like could potentially lead to like sort of a? Because don't like the majority of Americans think there might be a civil war in their time. Do you share that?
I mean, Americans have thought there's going to be civil war for the past 20 years. This is what I've heard, and I kind of like this idea. I don't think we ever get to civil war until people are actually starving in the streets. Like, to actually get out and start killing people, it would require you to feel like your life is like in danger. And I think to get to there, you'd have to like get people to start starving or something. So I don't think we're going to have like a civil war or whatever.
Oh my goodness, interesting. And on like an unrelated note, how do you feel Republicans are doing in the United States? Do you think Trump will hold on next election cycle?
That's so heavily news dependent. I mean, there's so many different ways to go. The Democrats could mess up quite a bit and pick a really bad presidential candidate that might have some blunders. There might be something related to news, like anything that would be like anything that would favor like kind of like fascist things would support the Republicans a lot. So, for instance, a big terrorist attack on our country, or a big terrorist attack abroad, or some way of undermining people's confidence in our political system,
by the gnomes
are all things that lead people to want to flirt with authoritarianism more. So, I mean, something like that, like big terrorist attack, like something like that could lead to more favorable outcomes for Republicans. If they're able to get more of their agenda passed, or like if the economy does well, these things can also potentially lead to higher Republican favorability, I guess. It just really depends. But then like if another big scandal drops relating to a Republican, like Roy Moore related stuff, that could be bad as well. And then big Supreme Court decisions. There's so much. Like, I mean, there's like a million different things that could determine. It's impossible for me to say. I would never even try to guess how Trump will be looking in 2020.
Oh, no, I suppose it was a very multi-layered question, but I appreciate you answering it.
Mm-hmm.
And you answered it very well. So yeah, that sort of leads on to like a topic of like, most academics would be like generally confused by your existence. Most older people, they would say, how do you, as a gaming streamer, get into politics? Like, what is the overlap there?
I've always been interested in stuff more than gaming. Like I don't even identify with the label like gamer. I don't know. I feel like people should have, or I've always had like a wide variety of interests in life. So even back, 7 or 8 years ago, if you see me playing video games a lot, we're usually talking about other interesting things related to science or psychology or even philosophy. So these have kind of been topics I've always explored. And then being, a public figure and playing video games and having the spotlight on you, you're always engaging with these issues, whether you want to or not, in one way or another anyway.
That's interesting. You said you don't like being labeled as a gamer. Why is that?
I'm maybe this is my American speaking, but I've got like a really hard individual bent. I feel like identifying with groups undermines your individual identity quite a bit. And anytime you like hardcore identify with a certain group, I feel like you take on characteristics that I consider to be a negative. So for instance, I don't like to get my likes or dislikes from a certain group, and I don't like the idea that belonging to a certain group usually means that you are against other types of groups. That type of stuff usually bothers me. So I guess like as a couple of examples, like gamers tend to have a certain political slant. Most of them tend to be white, young, straight, male, conservative, pro-Trump, pro-Jordan Peterson, pro these kinds of people, anti-SJW, reactionary towards progressive politics. I don't like to identify with that group of people. And then like gamers in general can be elitist about the platforms they play on. So PC gamers might say, oh, Xbox and PlayStation, all those things suck a lot. They're so bad, ignoring the fact that we all grew up playing these systems. So yeah, I don't know. I'm usually not a big fan identifying with groups. That extends to a lot of areas of my life too. Like I'm not very big on nationalism or even like like ethnicity or any of that stuff as well, for me at least.
Oh my goodness, you say you would be okay to classify you as a radical individualist? Are you a libertarian or that sort of thing?
In a perfect world, I would be. Yeah, I don't think that the world as it exists today is very compatible with libertarian ideology. Is because we're starting from so many different. I feel like my political theory is very, very bad. So, but it feels to me that like for something like extreme laissez-faire, no government interventionism, for that type of stuff to work, everybody would have to be starting off at a relatively even playing field, and that's definitely not where we're at right now. So, libertarianism doesn't seem to deliver me or deliver a world to me that I would find preferable.
So you're like a sort of left-leaning, positive freedom libertarian, right? But you think freedom must be socially constructed, that sort of thing.
Sure.
Maybe even I'm getting confused, really.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I don't know. I don't know the label, but
no, it's just very odd because normally when someone tells me how much they love individualism, they tend to be like quite staunch Republicans. It's quite
Oh yeah,
like
well
a
it's
new there.
yeah, and I mean I would have been if you would have talked to me 5 years ago. I was, but I mean as you get older, as long as you have like a good way to verify information and gather information about the world, I think you have to temper your views out with what exists in reality. So I might say like like for instance, I'll say that the color of your skin doesn't matter in regards to how you enjoy media or movies, and that might be an opinion that I have. That is an opinion that I personally have. I don't care if the main character is gay or trans or a lesbian or whatever, or white or black or whatever. It doesn't bother me. But you would be an idiot to say that everybody should feel that way, because clearly that's just not how it works. We've got tons of sociological data, we've got psychological data, and we've got socioeconomic data, in terms of like more people will go and see a movie if there's somebody black in it, right? The Black Panther was immensely popular, and a lot of people credit that to having, a more diverse cast than normal. In psychology, we tend to identify with figures that look like us more. There's a ton of things, right? I feel like it feels like that extreme libertarian position is sometimes rooted in naivety, that you don't have a full understanding sometimes of how people work if you really believe that that type of world is fully possible to exist. That's what it feels like to me, at least.
Oh, it's interesting. So you said you had a ideological shift from right wing to left wing. What spurred that on?
I mean, internally, I'm still very much, like I said, like on the very deep inside, I guess I would consider myself an extreme libertarian. But the shift just kind of happens as I collect more data and I experience more things, going on in time. And that's kind of what has just moved me further and further to the left. So, I mean, like a classic example would be something like a minimum wage, where in theory, minimum wage is a pretty catastrophic idea. Anytime you start introducing price controls into a market, you're going to cause distortions that are going to cause externalities that are going to cause bad effects to happen. But then when you look at like the empirical data, none of that actually happens. So like, oh, okay, well, I guess minimum wage is okay. Even though in theory I thought it was bad, when as I grow up and I collect more data, I see, oh, well, actually this type of thing is much better than I thought it was. And you can apply that to any number of positions I've had socially or politically.
Okay, so would it say that you doing this like sort of online political thing is what spurred on your change?
Yeah, a little bit, sure. I've always been kind of a big, my idea is that, like, if I have an idea, I should be able to argue it with any other rational person, and we should be able to come to an agreement, and if we don't, then either they're irrational or my information is wrong. So I've always been kind of in the fire to determine, the legitimacy of my views.
That's interesting. And was there anyone in particular, any, like, big-name person who, like, sort of spurred on this shift, or was it just incremental changes?
No, it's just incremental changes over time.
Incremental changes, interesting. That's very interesting, my dude. Yeah, thanks for that. I appreciate that. So on to like sort of what I'm interested in really is the sort of like intersection between gaming and politics, which in academia is like an acknowledged thing, but something that's not really engaged with at all, because most academics are very old and they have no clue what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So in regards to sort of gaming and politics, do you believe there is like a wide audience for this, or have you hit a very like small niche?
No, I think there's a decent audience. It depends on what types of politics you're talking about, but I think there's an audience for it.
The audience for it. It's interesting. And you touched on this briefly, but can you tell me like why you believe that to be? Like, why is there an intersection between this gaming hobby and what is right now right-wing politics, or politics in general, really?
So I'm of the firm belief that everything is political. Literally every single action in society in some way is political. So if you look at it through that lens, my next statement would be that we all view politics through within a particular paradigm that we exist in. And so if we apply that lens as well, we have a bunch of people that are of a particular demographic, so typically younger, straight white men. So they all have their particular political views being part of that group, and everything they do is necessarily going to be political. And then you and then you look at how they view politics through all of the issues that are going to be impacting them directly, and then it kind of you end up in a pretty predictable world for what you would expect their political views to be. So, for instance, if we're going to talk about things like incarceration rates of Native Americans, most gamer people don't care about these issues. Like, why would you? Who cares if black people go to jail? You don't care. Or like things heavily related to, say, like socialized healthcare. There's a good chance that if you grew up with PlayStations and Xboxes and you've got a computer now, like that's not something that you care as much about. Like you probably are okay there financially. But if we talk about something like censorship in the media, well, a lot of gamers are going to be wrestling with this issue directly because, or representation in the media, right? Because now we've got games coming out with more women in them, with more gay characters in them, with more black people in them. And now we're being told that we can't say, the N-word all the time online, that we can't joke about being Nazis all the time. So the only influence or the only way that you see politics is through like kind of like some progressive social changes. And that causes you to become a reactionary to everything progressive, everything left, everything Democrat. And then somehow, 2 months later, you find yourself binge watching Stefan Molyneux videos worshiping Trump as like the next dictator of the United States or something.
Oh my gosh, quite interesting. So, am I correct in understanding this? That you've sort of laid out this like timeline as gaming identity being almost like synonymous with white identity politics.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I would say so. I'd say there's a huge crossover. Yeah, you can see this from like do you know what Gamergate is?
I was going to ask you about that later, but yeah.
Yeah, so like that's like kind of like your plugin, right? Like you get into Gamergate, you see that all the SJWs are bad. You continue to follow these figures as they evolve politically, people like Sargon of Akkad and whatnot. And then you know, now that you know that the SJWs are bad, all the SJWs are Democrats. So now you think you have a platform to talk about wider political issues, like, oh well, because you view everything through the lens of SJWs, and so everything related to Democrats in the United States is bad. And now like the right and the Republicans and Daddy Trump, who owns the libs and who is not in favor of PC culture, is awesome. And then everything that identifies with Trump is good as well. So people like Le Pen, things like Brexit, you know, all of these things are also pro-right as well. And now somehow, even though you don't know anything about politics and you have no fucking idea what's going on around the world, because you don't like SJWs telling you not to say the N-word on Twitter, all of a sudden you've become like an authoritarian proto-fascist that's supporting these right-leaning movements all around the world, even though you have no idea what you're talking about in regards to any of these things. That seems to be what happens.
Oh my. And would you view that timeline as being a sort of natural, natural evolution of white privilege? Or would you view it as something that's been like, sort of like these like sort of like alt-right people have pounced on this like sort of young white gamer demographic to like take advantage of it?
Yeah, I think people have done it. Yeah. Or are you asking me like, has it happened or?
So I'd be curious, like, which do you think is more powerful, essentially? Which would be more influential? You know, natural white identity gaming politics, or the like direct indoctrination of these far right groups targeting gamers, you know, like Myelinopolis.
It's really hard to say. It creates a feedback loop where one plays into the other. You know, Milo wouldn't exist if gamers weren't already hungry for that kind of reactionary attitude. But but Milo existing and feeding into that causes more gamers to get this reactionary attitude, right? So Milo Yiannopoulos will maybe bully call out a specific trans person to harass during a speech, and then get barred from going to a university. And now he sells that story as though, look, people are banning me because they think I'm telling the truth. And now a whole bunch of more reactionary people will jump onto it, you know, saying the same thing, like, oh look, they're banning all conservatives from talking at colleges, even though this isn't really like that widespread of a thing in the US, you know. So yeah, I mean, yeah. It's hard to assign blame to one or the other. It seems like they kind of create a feedback loop and they play into each other.
Which is interesting. I was going to ask you what you thought Gamergate was, but you've already clearly defined that, which I appreciate.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I want to say, maybe I'm too charitable, but I want to say that Gamergate started off with good intentions, but I don't even know anymore. And that group got hijacked so quickly that, yeah.
Yeah, what would you say to, because I read about this in the book Alt America by David Nyworth. He said that the Gamergate argument is that they arose in sort of retaliation to a hostile left-wing gaming press, and also as like sort of a backlash to, I don't know how you'd phrase it, like forced diversity in games. Well, how would you respond to that?
That sounds like a fair summary to me, sure.
It's a fair summary, but do you think it's based in reality, or is it just, I don't know, apologetics or dog whistling or whatever?
That summary of how Gamergate started?
Yeah, do you think it's like fair? Because also, because in this Arius book, he said that was all essentially BS, and actually Gamergate was all about hating women minorities.
I mean, that's one way that you could present it. But if I'm trying to be fair, I think that the left does lean really hard into people online, and people online can feel attacked for a variety of reasons. There are a couple mechanisms at play here for why the messaging on the left can be flawed. So I mean, like, I think that other summary, the first one you gave, I think is a little bit more charitable towards the right. Sure.
That's interesting, and it's commonly noted in academia now that sort of Gamergate was the foundations to give us all these, like, I don't know what you call them, alt-right, alt-light online personalities, people like Lauren Southern, like Sargon. Why do you think that is, that these people who originated from this, what is like observably a very like niche gaming conflict, into like being catapulted into mainstream politics?
Well, so very quickly, I just because I like to be very clear with my political labels, I would never call Sargon of Akkad alt-right, or I don't even think alt-light. Lawrence Southern, I would call full-on alt-right. I think these two people are very different. I think that Lawrence Southern is legitimately a racist that wants to build like a white ethno-state. I don't think Sargon of Akkad is like that. He's just unintentionally racist because he's a fucking idiot. So I think these two people are very different. Whereas one is evil and one is just stupid, if you want to use the word evil there. So insofar as your question, are you asking like what particular event led these people? Like I'm guessing there's misunderstanding in terms of like what exactly you're asking here.
Oh no, sorry, I'm probably not being clear enough.
No, that's okay.
I'm just looking to like understand from an aspect like why. How is it this niche gaming conflict amidst this like one community catapulted these like massive like multi-thousand like how did it create them?
I mean, man, you could write like a whole paper on this. Like, why? Yeah. I don't know. The problem is there's like 8 different lenses through which we could view this. On one hand, and all of these are hypotheses. I don't have data for all of these, but like on one hand, I would say people probably want to feel like their struggle matters on a global stage. So if you can identify a problem and you've got a platform to speak about it, you probably want to go out and speak about it. So if you feel like SJWs are ruining video games, you want to feel like that matters to the world. So that encourages you to go out and speak about things. That's one reason why. Another reason is when things have been the status norm for so long, or with the status quo for so long, when you start to change those things, it makes a lot of people that have enjoyed those positions of being the default, the norm, the power holder, those people end up feeling very resentful. So if you're a white straight male and every single video game that comes out has white straight men as the leaders or as the protagonists, as soon as you start to see that change up, you can feel like you're getting screwed. That's one thing. Necessarily, when you talk about making society more progressive, you're oftentimes talking about limiting things that the previous power holders enjoyed. So for instance, if you're a white straight male and you use like the word fag a lot or something, or if you use like racial slurs or whatever, these are things where people are telling you not to do something. So you had a freedom and now that freedom is being taken away from you. And now you're feeling like more resentful for that. And I mean, like there's even, I don't know, there's like so many more things you could talk about too. If you've got like people cheerleading you, people like Sargon of Akkad or people whatever who identify a problem that you have and they try to tie that problem into other things. So like for instance, hey, you hate SJWs because they ruin your video games, right? Well, SJWs also ruin people in colleges and SJWs also ruin all of politics. So right there's like a million different ways for why or how people will get like roped into these things, I think.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, when researching this sort of thing, the issue of diversity in gaming, the issue of quotation marks, the issue of diversity in gaming comes up quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And why do you think that's being like such a contentious issue? Because from the Gamergate perspective, you could say they would argue that this is just a, I don't know how to describe this, a deliberate self-inserting of minorities where like story-wise they really shouldn't be there for like entirely political purposes. And is that like a valid critique?
No, that I actually love that critique because that critique often undercases how discriminatory a person's foundational attitude is. And you see this happen a lot. So for instance, if I have a character in a game and I make that character homosexual, people will say, why are you making that person gay? Like, this is very strange. Like, you're clearly doing it for political reasons. But the reality is in real life, gay people exist all the time without needing reasons for it. Like, like people in real life don't need a justification for being gay, so you shouldn't need a justification for having a gay character in a video game. Or people say, like, why does the main character have to be a woman? Why does the main character have to be a black person? Well, I mean, I don't know. Why not? Like, you never need a justification for why the main character is white or why the main character is a male. You saw it happen recently. Are you familiar with the Battlefield drama that happened?
Loosely. I'm loosely familiar.
Yeah, so people started to ask why there was a female character, and then they started to lay out this whole set of criteria for justifying the existence of that female character in ways that you would never, ever request for a man. So, for instance, somebody might say, okay, well, if you're going to have a female character, why not choose a historical female from World War II? Like, this would make more sense because you're actually respecting, females who participated in World War II. And it's like, okay, well, you've never made this request for a male character. And to my understanding, in all the Battlefield games and the Call of Duty games, you're never playing a real male person. You're just playing like a random, stand-in soldier that's like a random straight white dude that is whatever. So I don't know why it matters if there's a random female soldier, There only needed to be one that fought in the whole war to have one in a video game. And even if there wasn't, like, we accept, like, even if there wasn't, I would never concede this argument, but even if I did, We accept ahistorical things in video games all the time. The way that all of these games play out is incredibly unrealistic. Anybody that's ever handled real firearms will tell you that there's a million different problems with the way that firearms function in games. Why is it that if I've got 7 bullets left in a magazine and I reload, I don't lose those 7 bullets? Am I actually physically removing every single one and putting them into an... Like, all of these things are ridiculous. And people say, well, that's okay. That's just for gameplay. Well, okay. Well, what if I want to put something in just for representation so that I can get more people interested in gaming? What's the problem with that, you know?
That's interesting. Why do you think it is that in recent years we've seen such a surge of like diversity in video games, given the, as you mentioned before, the overwhelmingly straight white male audience?
I think that video games, I think that I don't think it's just video games. I think that's all of society. For the longest time, you know, straight white men have kind of been the default character in all of society, in all the protagonists and all the preferable characteristics, right? Being straight is better than being gay. Nobody makes fun of you being straight. Being white is the default, and it's good. There's nothing bad about being white. And then being male, masculine traits are almost always preferable to feminine traits. In fact, as a man, you'll often be made fun of for having feminine traits. And those always seem to be preferable, you know, regardless. So it seems like in all of media, we've kind of seen this push for more representation from different demographics. You know, we've female Ghostbuster movies, or, you know, the Black Panther, black people starring as superheroes, you know, trans and gay characters appearing now in different movies. So, I mean, I think video games are just kind of like, are just along for the ride. I don't think video games are like leading the charge in representation. It just seems to be part of it sits in the context of a wider cultural movement, it seems.
All right, so you're saying that the sort of backlash to diversity in video games is something we're seeing across all media?
Oh, yeah, you see it happen in movies as well, yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, I was just thinking of recently they announced something to do with the Witcher Netflix TV series, didn't they?
Yeah.
There's been some backlash about that, I hear.
Well, initially people thought they were going to cast Ciri as somebody who's black. But like and again, like I feel like a lot of the ways that people complain is very indicative of how they of how they feel inside, and this is one of the big things that caused me to shift radically. When people are cast as white all the time, my old response was, why does it matter what if a black person or a woman were to complain to me, hey, I don't like the fact that all the main characters are straight and white? What I would respond with is, well, why does this matter to you? Who cares if they're straight or white? Like, you should be able to identify them with no matter what. This shouldn't be a big deal to you. And I said that, and a lot of people agreed with me when I said it, but I actually, truly, I feel that way. But what I found out was most people don't feel that way. A lot of the people that agreed with me when I said that were people that were only agreeing with me because it was a convenient tool to have everybody be straight and white. Because now, if I go and watch a movie or I play a video game and the lead character is black or is female or is gay, everything I said before doesn't change. I don't care what the main character is. That's fine for me. But now all of the white people that said that before are using the same arguments now that minorities were using in the past. Well, hold on. You know, when that FIFA game came out, I can't play a game with the lead character Hispanic. This is totally immersion shattering for me. Or, well, you know, why are there all of these black people or women now are the strong main characters and all the white people are just on the side? This is bullshit. It's like, well, hold on. I thought we said we didn't care about these things. Now it seems like you really do. So you always cared about it. You just didn't care because you were the default role.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a very good critique, I gotta say. A very good critique. I like it. Well done. Yeah, so going back to like the broader notion of Gamergate, do you think that ultimately, in like a wider like political sense, do you think it was impactful?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that I think that before then, like, you could say maybe gamers had some kind of political leanings, maybe, but I think Gamergate really set the stage on which a lot of people kind of like started to build themselves up a lot and kind of represent gaming communities. Man, I wish I had more historical perspective on this, but like people like Milo Yiannopoulos kind of got big off the back of that Gamergate stuff too. And Sargon of Akkad did as well, right? Like, I'm pretty sure even though they don't necessarily call themselves gamers or associate with gamers now, didn't they get pretty big off the backs of like those Gamergate movements early on?
Every single one of them. Gavin McInnes, Milo, every single like, for every person you debated got big off Gamergate.
Gotcha. Are you sure Gavin McInnes did? Because that guy actually hates games. Oh, okay. That's interesting.
Yeah, he made a video about Gamergate. Yeah, like literally everyone you can think of, they were in there.
Gotcha. So when you look at subreddits that exist today, like Kotaku in Action, this is a subreddit with 100,000 people. These guys are like indistinguishable from the Donald. Like, they're insane. They're incredibly, like, they're just anti-SJW reactionaries. That's like what the whole subreddit is, you know?
My gosh. And do you think that trend is fading away, or is it going to continue strong to the future?
I don't know. I can't predict that. I wish I could. I mean, I want to say that that'll get lesser and lesser over time, but we've seen the kind of entire world is starting to shift more to the right compared to what it was 10 or 15 years ago. Now, for as to why that is it because of greater representation in media for minorities that's upsetting white people? Is it because of globalist policies that have left certain middle or lower class people a little bit behind compared to the larger capital owners? Is it because the Syrian refugee crisis drove unprecedented numbers of brown people into parts of Europe that, caused things like Brexit and whatnot? Like, I don't know what the reason is, and I don't know what the direction of the world is. I can only hope, but I don't think I have enough information to accurately tell you what the direction of, politics are in the future. I wish I could, but...
Oh my God. Are you not confident that you'll win in the free market of ideas? Have you not seen Dave Rubin?
Yeah, Dave.
Disgusting.
Disgusting. I believe, to be fair, and it's cringy to say this because of all the people that say it, but I do believe in the free marketplace of ideas. The problem is that right now the marketplace is inhabited by people that are too stupid to discuss said ideas, so it does more damage than good. I love the idea of the free marketplace of ideas, that there are intelligent people that are presenting arguments for both sides, that people are smart enough to grapple with and understand with intellectually and responsibly. But what happens is, the problem is that authoritarians use liberalism as a tool to further authoritarianism, and they don't actually care about what is right or what is honest or what is true. And that's kind of the problem that I have with people like Dave Rubin. Like Dave Rubin says he defends free speech, but he doesn't even know arguments for or against free speech. So how the fuck can he even say that? This guy's an adult. I don't know. It just bothers me.
Oh my goodness. You said that do you believe people over time are getting less able to, it's quite an interesting argument to say that over time as people have more access to social media and news, that they're actually becoming less informed and less able to argue. Is that the case you're making?
I don't know if I would make that case. I would just appeal to things that I know to be true in psychology. So from an evo psych point of view, humans seem to excel greatly in certain environments when we can categorize information very quickly, right? We create dichotomies, we recognize or see patterns over things, and our ability to do this very quickly with limited information was a great asset to us a long time ago. But now it seems like the way that this plays out, there's a million different psych experiments that we can talk about where it seems like humans' ability to understand our world in an objective sense and free from our own biases is just incredibly hampered. We're horrible at it. So if you take a ton of people that are horrible at understanding their own biases and their own preconceptions, and then you put them in front of people that want to make money off of their biases and preconceptions, what's going to happen? If you're trying to sell advertisements on YouTube or Facebook, are you going to try to responsibly advertise people? No, you're going to let them watch a Sargon of Akkad video, and then you're going to be shoving reactionary alt-right or alt-light videos down them for the next 10 hours to try to keep them watching as many advertisements as possible. If you're a major media corporation, are you going to sit there and try and responsibly inform your people? Maybe. Some try to a little bit, but at the end of the day, your responsibility isn't to public discourse, it's to the shareholders that own your company, and they want to see you make money. And if you can exploit people's natural biases to do that, why wouldn't you? I guess the kind of point that I'm getting at is it seems like humans aren't naturally equipped to deal with what we have in the world today, and it doesn't seem like we get the education required to become aware of how our biases work. And there are people who are actively trying to capitalize on those biases to generate as much money as possible, and they have become ruthlessly efficient at it. It seems to spell out a really bad case for where we're at now.
Right, interesting. That's very interesting. Thank you for that. If we could sort of shift tilt now to maybe the final-ish topic. That would be sort of the alt-right/alt-line. In your understanding, what are these two groups, and how do you differentiate between them?
Which two groups?
The alt-right and then the alt-line.
Alt-right doesn't mean anything to me. I'm not sure what that means. Alt-right, for you and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say this dismissively. I hear people use alt-right all the time. I hear people use alt-right all the time too. But alt-right, to what it really means is the alt-right is a group of people that believe that white people are being eradicated around the world by way of multiculturalism that's being pushed on them by the Jewish overlords that are trying to gain control of all the institutions of the world. And you can see this in evidence of the fact that the Jews control the financing sector, they control the media, things like Hollywood, that they're in charge of a lot of political systems. And what Jewish people try to do is they try to encourage political systems to adopt tenets of progressivism, so like multiculturalism, in the hopes of outbreeding and disempowering and killing eventually white people. And that's like the defining thing of the alt-right. And then all of their views kind of stem from there. I don't know. I hear people say alt-light. I guess I'm just not sure what they mean by that. But that's what an alt-writer is to me. That's why I'm very careful not to call like somebody like Sargon of Akkad. I don't think Sargon of Akkad is an alt-writer at all. I don't think he believes like he'll share a lot of policy positions with him because he's an idiot. But I don't think he actually believes in Jewish overlords the same way that somebody like Lawrence Southern might.
That's interesting. Yeah, from my research, the way I comprehend it is that alt-right is ethnic nationalism, whereas alt-light is more civic nationalism.
Yeah, but civic nationalism, I feel like that's just it feels like actual ethnic nationalism masquerades as civic nationalism sometimes. That's what it feels like, because like those dog whistles become indistinguishable at some point. Because like if you look at Lawrence Southern will never specifically say I like white people and I hate brown people, but she will say things like Western values are worth defending, or she'll release a video on her YouTube channel saying look at how Paris is changing forever, but the only thing the video is her walking around one of the slums of Paris showing a whole bunch of brown people, and it's like, okay, like I don't know what I'm supposed to take from this, Yeah.
That's interesting. So you would say that the alt-right people who say that, well, actually, I just care about culture, that they are not sincere in their beliefs in any way, and they are instead just dog whistling on a massive scale.
The problem is that, deductive reasoning is, premise, conclusion logically follows. Inductive reasoning is I have to gather some level of information and then make a probable guess for as to what is true. When you talk about what people are thinking, you can only speak in probabilities. You have to use induction to do it. My problem is that when I talk to somebody that is talking about how important Western values are to them, I can't get an answer. And I've ran this experiment a million times. If I get somebody on my stream like, well, it's not about brown people. It's not about, maybe I don't like Mexicans or Muslims or black people, but it's not about their skin color. It's about Western values. It's about American values. If I say, okay, well, here's an interesting thought experiment. Can you give me a value that you think a rural person from my state, Nebraska, a farmer, can you tell me how many values or what types of values that those people have in common with a gay man that lives in San Francisco or a lawyer that lives in New York City? What values do these three people share? And I mean, it's a ridiculous, right? What? Like, you're not agreeing on gun rights, even things that are core to the United States. You're not agreeing on gun rights. You're not necessarily agreeing on freedom of speech or freedoms. The rural guy in Nebraska thinks the gay guy shouldn't even be allowed to get married. You're not agreeing on how discrimination, like, what are your values that are shared here between all Americans? There aren't,
It's interesting. So are you denying the existence of conceptions of American culture or Western culture?
I think you can make some very broad general statements, but you are never going to be able to make a statement that is so broad but so specific that it encompasses all Americans and somehow excludes all Mexicans and Muslims. For instance, American conservative evangelical people, religious people, if they weren't racist, they would realize that they actually share an incredible amount in common with a lot of Hispanic people who tend to be more conservative socially, and a lot of Muslims who tend to be very socially conservative, Like, conservatives will go around here saying how horrible Sharia law is all the time, but then they'll demonize the fuck out of women that have premarital sex or women that wear things that they consider to be slutty. Lawrence Southern herself will shame women who wear certain things or say they deserve to be objectified on Twitter, and then they'll turn around and they'll talk about how horrible Islamic people treat women, but their arguments are the exact same. Women should wear the hijab because it protects them from the urges of men. And a lot of conservative women will say the same thing for why they wear, why they don't think two-piece bathing suits are ethical and whatnot. So it's like, yeah.
It's interesting. If I could sort of maybe challenge you on that.
Sure.
Because I was watching some content of yours earlier, and you, seemingly if you're talking about American culture in a negative context, it seems to me that you were able to sort of bring up a uniquely distinct thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where you're talking about how Americans have a culture of anti-intelligence, anti-intellectualism.
Yeah, I feel like Americans very much view like colleges, or well, I shouldn't say Americans. Republicans view intelligence or becoming educated, I should say, I guess, like at a university, as like a liberal indoctrination institute. Like if you listen to somebody like Rush Limbaugh talk about colleges, they'll say that you only go there to become indoctrinated by the liberal indoctrination machine or something.
I'm just curious. Does Western culture only not exist when it comes to positive aspects, or do you acknowledge that it exists when it comes to addressing negative aspects of it? When does it exist?
What do you mean by that? Can you explain?
I'm saying because the way I perceived it, you talking about the culture of anti-intellectualism is that when in a negative context, you will sort of begrudgingly acknowledge the existence of American culture, of Western culture. When it comes to a positive sense, you're like more hesitant. Why is that?
Wait, can you give me like an example of something? Sorry.
Oh, well, I've not seen all your content, but that was just the culture of anti-intellectualism when you were talking about America overall.
Oh, sure. I'm sorry. It might have. I'm not sure which debate you saw, but I might have been talking about like I might have been talking about like intelligence in like a sense and how it's portrayed in the media in Western society. In which case, I think the argument, what I was talking about was that it seems like in society, intellectualism is something that's kind of like pawned off as like an effeminate trait, and it seems like we view masculine traits as being generally positive. So like an example of this is that like in a lot of American media, and probably even in Western media in general, although I'll speak mainly to American media, if you have like a strong main character, anything related to like computers or hacking is usually pawned off on kind of like a geeky, effeminate sidekick. So like the James Bond movie, I wish I remember the names. It's like a good example of this, where like you'll have the main character who's got all the strength, all the bronze, all the desirable masculine traits, and then you always have like a geeky computer sidekick that you kind of pawn off all that stuff on. And it seems like the idea of being an intelligent person that's not like a valued, I guess, a valued thing in terms of protagonists in Western society sometimes.
No, it's just interesting because then I also you went on to further say that in in anime you can like observe aspects of Japanese culture there that you see.
Yeah, in Eastern
Japanese
culture.
Media,
Yeah. It seems like intelligence usually is considered a masculine trait. That if you watch like Japanese cartoons, like anime, if you play Japanese video games, it seems like the main characters oftentimes are intelligent and strong. That there isn't that distinction between having a geeky, sidekick character, or even when there is. So the example that I pointed to is Metal Gear Solid. Even when you do have like the dedicated geeky side character, he is never speaking down to the main character. The main character is following the conversations every time. There's never a moment where the main character says like, "Can you say that in English? LOL, I didn't understand." That never happens. Yeah.
No, that's interesting. I'm just having I don't want to push on this too much. It seems like a bit of an interrogation. It seems to me that like
it is. Let me clear, because I think I understand your issue. Yeah. Your issue is that I challenge people on Western values, and I say that these Western values don't exist, but then in the next breath, I'll sit here and criticize Western values. Well, how can I do that and be consistent, right? Is essentially a question, right?
Essentially, yeah. Much better than I put it.
Yeah, so like there probably are, if I were to admit, there probably are some Western values that I could probably get 90% of like Americans to grant. So things like probably something like a free market is something that most Americans will agree on. The only reason why I brought up before, the only reason why I brought it up before in a sense where like somebody can't say it is because when I'm asking somebody to tell me what they think Western values are, I'm asking them to give me an example of a Western value that would necessarily exclude, like Mexicans from the United States. So I would acknowledge that there are some Western values. I just don't think I don't think that these Western values exist that are unique to like Americans and Americans only, I guess is what I would say.
No, I get you. Thanks for answering that. I hope it didn't seem too aggressive there.
No, it's fine. No, I appreciate the challenge. I get it all the time, and you did it without calling me a pedophile, so I appreciate it.
I can't see why I would, but okay. All right. So, you sort of said earlier that back to sort of the alt-right, alt-right dichotomy. So you would deny that they're much like mainstream academia. They deny the existence of the alt-right. They say actually alt-right, alt-right, they're all the same. They would say that Sargon of Akkad in the same breath is just dog whistling white nationalists, essentially. Which I think you sort of agree with, but you don't agree with. Can you like clarify that for me?
I don't think Sargon of Akkad is a white nationalist at all, and I don't think he dog whistles for white nationalism. I think that he's just a total fucking idiot, and he ends up taking on policy positions that are indistinguishable from somebody that does. If that makes sense.
So you don't think he's a white nationalist, but you think he is a white nationalist audience, or
generally, yes, yeah.
And where's the distinction there? Like where's the
intentionality? which the problem is intentionality matters if you're trying to change somebody's mind, but it doesn't matter to the people that are being affected by things. This starts to get really nuanced. But let's say that I take two people. Let's say that one person thinks that women should be required to wear burqas, and another person thinks that women should be required to wear burqas. Let's say the first person thinks women should wear burqas because I love women and I don't want them to be molested or eye fucked in society. And I think that women should wear burqas to protect themselves. And I'm saying that because I genuinely do love women. And the other guy says women should wear burqas because they're subhuman, subservient pieces of shit and they don't deserve to show anything in society unless their man is telling them to. At the end of the day, both of these people might hold equivalent policy positions, which affect women the same, but the way that you would go about convincing these two people that they're incorrect is very different because they arrived at their positions very differently. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, it makes perfect sense, yeah. That's a great point, so when it comes to I've seen a few of your debates with characters such as Nick Fuentes and other radical people. Nick the Knife Fuentes, he calls himself, very nice.
We call him Booger Nick, but yeah.
Booger Nick, iconic, truly.
Gotcha.
Why do you engage with such individuals?
I don't know, because I'm naive as fuck, because I'm a liberal and a capitalist. I guess a long time ago, when I started to get into politics, what I thought was if I had the most reasonable, rational argument that was the most empirically sourced one, that people would be forced to agree with me. But what I found out was instead people just will call me a pedophile or call me short or say that I want to bomb countries or whatever. Instead, what happens is that I have to defend, or I don't have to defend, but I basically just get strawmanned constantly. I had this idea that when I would first get into politics, okay, well, let's have a debate on immigration, that there would be forums of people that would be typing about how stupid my views on immigration were, that oh, well, he thinks that, the minimum wage, or he thinks that workers won't be disproportionately affected, and that I would have to get into the trenches and fight with data and stats all day. But instead what happens is people just strawman the fuck out of all of my positions, and you've got people saying oh, Destiny wants to bomb the whole country of Mexico, or Destiny wants, pedophiles to fuck kids, or Destiny wants to murder all conservative. It just ends up being a really dumb waste of time, I guess.
Goodness, yeah. It seems you've said already you believe, though maybe hesitantly nowadays, in the free marketplace of ideas. That's probably why you can justify engaging with them. But what would you say to sort of the left-wing aggressive argument that you are in fact giving these people a platform and promoting their ideas?
My argument, because I believe in the free marketplace of ideas, what I would say is that I try to responsibly platform people. If I'm bringing somebody on, it's because I know their arguments and I'm prepared to engage with them. I don't let people just come onto my platform to preach. So.
No, that's interesting. That's very good. Sorry, I've lost my face. I've got a list of questions to ask you, which we're almost done anyway. Oh, sorry, 1 minute. 1 minute. So you engage with these alt-right extremist white nationalist individuals, and it's seemingly come at you don't need to go into it, but it's come at the cost of great harm to yourself, financially, even actual physical security. So why do you need to do it?
I love conflict. It's very enjoyable for me. Hopping into a call with 5 people that are screaming me down and getting to argue, it's just very enjoyable for me. It's recreation. I don't know why. It just is. I usually think that I have factually the superior position. I think that I am a more skilled interlocutor. I think that I can out-argue most people. And I think that, in my view, I think I make most people look stupid. And to take somebody that genuinely fucking hates me and actually wants to do physical harm to me, and then to get into an argument with them and have them look like a bumbling fucking idiot is incredibly enjoyable for me. It's a huge ego pump. It feels, it's enjoyable. It's fun. It's recreational. I don't know. I really enjoy that a lot. I don't know why. It's just a personality trait that I have. But some of those big calls where there's 5 people in a room all trying to scream at me and all are getting single-handedly destroyed one at a time just is really funny to me. I really enjoy that. There's no other there's no good answer for that. I don't have a deep answer for this is philosophically satisfying for these reasons. It's just enjoyable for me. I don't know why.
It's enjoyable for you. Would you say you have a contrarian personality trait? Do you just intrinsically enjoy getting into flame wars with people?
Absolutely not. That's actually a huge trigger. Well, I enjoy getting into a flame. I enjoy arguing with people, but I'm not a contrarian. If you argue with me about, a lot of people like to call me a contrarian. When I see people throw out these arguments, it's typically because they have no good ones. But every single argument I've ever engaged with, I can source down to literal epistemic levels. We can start all the way at my theory of truth and build up to that policy position. I don't hold positions to be contrarian. Most of my positions are way more grounded than any position that any person I typically talk to is. So no, I never take a contrarian unless I specifically say like, hey, like I'm going to argue this thing to see how you respond. I don't have like positions that are just rooted in contrarianism. I don't think my real positions are controversial enough against a lot of gamer bros. Why would I need to invent some?
Which is, I just asked that question because in doing my research, and doing my wee bit of research on you, it seems that even when you were sort of a right-wing individual, you had a quite hostile relationship with the left then, and they used to try to like deplatform you and censor you and get your advertisers taken down. And like, it seems to me like no matter what position you have, you are being aggressively attacked by the opposite.
Yeah,
I'm just curious, like, why are you such a magnet for hate?
I'm very unapologetic about my views. I'm very vocal about them. I think it's the best way to figure out if my views are correct, and if they're not, it's the best way to change it. So yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty combative as well. Like if somebody's saying something that I think is dumb, I'll jump on it. I'm very much like I enjoy conflict too. So if somebody says something that's really dumb, and I think it's dumb, my go-to is to argue with that person. That's usually how I enjoy resolving things. So yeah, I could be wrong, and I'm somewhat hesitant to say this, but I'm pretty sure I've been more viciously attacked by the left and the right than I don't want to say than any other person, but most other people. Like people like Boogie or 1488 try to cry that they've been attacked by both sides, but they gotten hate on Twitter. I've had the left go after my sponsors and then go after clients of my sponsors if those sponsors don't drop me, and then I've had the right do the same. The only difference between the right and the left is that the right will go after your sponsors, but they also go after you in real life too. So for instance, I've had right-leaning people try to dox me, like where my kid's mom lives, call the FBI on me and whatnot. The left never went that far. The left usually goes after you financially. The right wants you dead generally, but that's kind of consistent with I guess authoritarians, right? So
very, very, very intense.
Yeah.
I would say I'm amazed you continue to do that.
Wait, hold on. The microphone is getting a little laggy right now. Can you say that again?
Sorry, my laptop's dying. I'm not sure.
Oh, no,
I'm just really impressed that you managed to keep doing this despite all the raging opposition. But I guess maybe you've just got would you say you have like a unique personality quirk?
Oh yeah, I would definitely say my personality is very unique. Yeah, and I try to make people aware of that. I do think I'm pretty unique and that I enjoy the conflict so much. And you shouldn't expect every single person to do this. When I started out, I initially said that every single person on the left should be willing to engage in these debates. If we've got the better arguments, you should be able to do it. But after being exposed to the intense and extreme vitriol of the people on the right, I no longer hold that position. I totally understand why people wouldn't want to engage in this type of behavior, and I 100% would never criticize somebody for doing it, especially if you've got a dog in the game. Like, I'm a white straight male and I make a lot of money. No matter what happens, I'm fine. Even if Trump is president for the next 800 years, I'm going to be okay. If you're a trans person and you're getting into some of these arguments, it might be a lot harder to have that argument when, Trump is literally trying to kick you out of the military, or the conservative you're talking to literally wants you shocked until you change your ways, in some electrocution camp. So, I totally understand why it can be more difficult for some people to hold some of these arguments. They hit a lot closer to home than they would for somebody like me. So, yeah.
Oh, good answer. So to sort of like we wrap things up, I asked you about the trajectory of Gamergate, and sort of if you look at, I mentioned this in an email to you. If you look at sort of YouTube, I don't know how to describe it, YouTube like clap, YouTube subscribers, audience. It seems to me that a lot of like individuals such as Sargon of Akkad have like, if not stagnated, but then are actively declining in subscribers and viewership and followers. Whereas people like you and sort of people like ContraPoints, etc., are like growing. So can you like explain what's happening on YouTube culture? Like what's up with this?
I think these are two different things that are unrelated, actually. So on one hand, I would say that the left is learning to meme a little bit better. This gets into, I'm a little uncomfortable talking because this is more kind of like conjecture theory, I guess. But like, it seems to me that the right was able to take some things that they shouldn't have been able to take. So look at somebody like Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro will constantly say like, my facts don't care about your feelings, facts over feelings, right? That's interesting because if you are a fact-based person at all, you would never come to any of the conclusions that Ben Shapiro says. Why did the left concede that? Why did the left give up fact-based arguments in favor of making social justice arguments? Like, I don't think these two things are necessarily exclusionary. And the easiest way to see that is to watch Ben Shapiro talk about anything related to transgender people. His knowledge of biology, or what mainstream thought is in biological fields or psychological fields, is hilariously fucking uninformed. He is literally giving Thiel's arguments over the fact-based arguments of our scientific establishments and institutions. So, like, I think that left-leaning people have started to realize that. So you see videos coming out from people like, say, Sean and Jen, or ContraPoints, or H-Bomber Guy, where instead of making these moral compulsions of people, like, hey, we should treat minorities well because of blah, 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 they can actually make fact-based arguments. And they say, hey, this conservative is full of shit because that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, and this is right, and this is right. So I think that's one of the reasons why you've seen left-leaning people get a little bit more popular now on YouTube, that they're finally engaging in that fact-based argument, and they're being a little bit more snarky as well. That's another thing that we kind of conceded to the right. And I think that the political messaging is important too. Like, right-leaning people are ruthlessly intelligent when it comes to messaging. That whole Southern strategy thing. When you see people on 4chan making posts about how Charlottesville is bad for their movement because walking around LARPing as KKK people with tiki torches makes you look like a fucking moron, and then you've got people like Richard Spencer that look nice, they're slick, they're presentable, they're handsome, they speak eloquently. Like, these people are so much better for their messaging than if you look at the left. We've got like, blue-haired screaming college professors on campuses, and it's like, okay, well, that's not necessarily the best thing as well, So I think that left-leaning people are becoming more popular because they're starting to take on more of what the right already saw as good kind of like rhetorical strategies. And then I think some right-leaning people are diminishing in popularity because the right is experiencing huge splits right now in terms of where, like, you had like kind of like the actual fascist authoritarians versus the useful idiot centrists that are now starting to realize, wait, holy shit, what's going on? I think Sargon has experienced that, where Sargon is like, oh fuck, like, I actually really am a liberal, but my entire audience is now fucking authoritarians. Like, fuck, what happened? What do I do?
That's interesting. So do you believe the left has sort of, at least on YouTube, departed from the sort of identity politics and is now engaging in, I don't know what you call, like, rational discussion? That's why they've grown in popularity.
I would say,
I misunderstand you?
I'd say yes to the latter half. They're engaging in better types of discussion. I don't think anybody. I really don't like the term identity politics because all politics is identity politics. Yeah, so it's very hard for me to say like they're not using identity politics. Like, I mean, like Trump argues identity politics all the times when he talks about us as Americans. That's a form of identity. Typically, any political issue, you're going to need to get some group of people to buy into it, and you're usually appealing to somebody's identity there. So the phrase identity politics is very strange to me. But yeah, I think that the left is generally engaging in more successful rhetorical strategies now. I hope that continues to happen, at least online.
That's quite an interesting point you made, because the last time I heard that point being made about everything being identity politics was from an alt-right racist I interviewed.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, alt-right people will constantly decry identity politics and then talk about building ethno-states. It's a very interesting position to have, but yeah.
That's a weird thing. Is that a bit of like horseshoe theory in action, or do you not buy into that?
I think that horseshoe theory is true on very, very superficial ways, but in under actual political analysis, I think it kind of falls apart. So I don't like to talk about horseshoe theory much. Basically, the two extremes can begin to resemble themselves in some behaviors, but the rationale for getting there and their end goals are dramatically different from one another. So the idea that the two begin to resemble each other at the extremes, I think that's only illustrative of your kind of like political misunderstanding if you really believe that, I think. So I'm not a big fan of the horseshoe theory thing.
No, fair enough. All right, and final question, which may be quite brief. Deplatforming is something you've changed your stance on numerous times, to the extent that I'm not sure what your actual position is now. As someone who's been aggressively deplatformed by both the left and right over the years, what's your perspective on it now?
My initial position was that I don't believe anybody should ever be deplatformed ever. My new current position, and I don't even know why I bother to say it. So the position that everyone says I have is that I want to deplatform everybody who disagrees with me. My actual position is I think that bad faith actors or people that engage in gross misinformation spreading should be deplatformed. So for instance, like somebody like Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who tweeted out that edited video to explain why Jim Acosta was banned from the White House, that would be an example of somebody who should never be allowed to have a public media account ever and should be banned from that type of stuff for the rest of their life. People that engage in bad faith actions or spreading of misinformation, I think do a demonstrable harm to democracy. I think that they destroy public discourse. I don't think they offer anything of value. And I think they just destroy all everything good about liberalism, and they're horrible people. Yeah, that's just what bothers me, I guess.
That's interesting. Can you name me one person on the left who you would deplatform?
One person on the left who I would deplatform. Fuck. I spent all my time arguing with people on the right. I'm trying to think of anybody on the left that says there have been some highly questionable Vox videos that I've seen, but most of these end up relating to art. So I'm not sure if I would like hold them. I'm not sure if I would hold them accountable as much. There are like, I guess like I can say like people in general that are tankies or that are like super pro communism or socialism. Although a lot of those people try to be a little bit more intellectually honest, I guess. I just tend to disagree with their theories. I'm not sure. I would have to think about it more.
You know, it's interesting because again, I saw something you said that you would deplatform Sean Hannity, but
Yes.
Isn't he the person with like the #1 radio news show in the United States right now? Isn't that quite a radical argument to make that you would take the #1 guy off air?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like it, but I mean, again, I think this guy does demonstrable harms to democracy. I mean, like when you're unironically spreading things like Pizzagate, saying that like Seth Rich was murdered by like Hillary Clinton's henchmen, you know, like you're destroying everything that makes democracy work. Like you're just destroying everything.
No, that is fair enough. That is fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think that just about wraps it up. No, thank you very much for your time, Eddie. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Where are you from? I'm just curious.
Well, I'm from Northern Ireland.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, appreciate you being you're still online, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you've been very substantive, very, I'm going to say, very lit. It was a very lit interview.
Thanks, buddy. What is your, what are you working on for college? What is your major, I guess, or your post-grad work?
Oh, yeah, it's politics, just a master's in politics.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. In general, it's not, you don't have like a specialization or anything, or?
No, it's just general politics.
Okay, cool. All right. Well, hey, good luck. Do you think that oh, here's my random question that I could ask you. Do you think your country or I shouldn't say your country. No, I can say your country. No, wait, I can't say your country. Wait.
Well, you can say
the United Kingdom is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, or United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland?
Northern Ireland.
Of Northern Ireland. Okay, yeah, okay, so I can say your country. Okay. Sorry, I mix you up sometimes. Your guys' shit over there is real fucking weird. Do you think you guys are actually going to Brexit, or do you think that this is going to be pushed off inevitably until people kind of sort of almost forget about it?
We're definitely going to Brexit because Article 50 has already been triggered. So even if we come up with no deal, we will leave by default, essentially. So
wouldn't that be like catastrophic to your entire? Wouldn't that like literally be like almost doomsday scenario levels of things, or?
I mean, it's rough, but the negotiations have been such a unabashed disaster that really at this point, and a no-deal Brexit is starting to look to me quite favorable. Because at least under the WTO, we have like actual solutions and regulations, like how to solve things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now we have absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And the deal might be quite quite bad that our lovely Prime Minister makes.
Gotcha.
So, I'd say the chances of a no-deal Brexit have like increased exponentially over the past I'd say even like week, 2 weeks. It just gets worse and worse, really.
All right. Okay. Were you a Brexiter or were you a Remainer?
Well, I was a Brexiter, my dude.
Oh,
I'm actually quite right wing, but I do enjoy talking to you because I think you are quite a substantive dude.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it, buddy.
All right, man. Have a great day.
Have a good one.
All right, bye-bye.
Fuck, I should have talked to that guy more. He's working on his master's thesis in politics, but he was a big Brexiter. That's very interesting.